In maximum security, an elder asked me to write two letters. One was forgiving the people who hurt me, and the other was forgiving myself. Then we burned them. That was honestly probably the lightest I felt in years, if not my whole life. So today, on this episode of From Shadows to Strength, we are talking about forgiveness. Now, this isn't the polite kind. This is the kind that feels like arguably probably one of the hardest workouts, hardest emotional workouts you will ever do, and why most men will never ever do it. So, Jay, we've talked about a lot of heavy stuff on this show. Next to addiction, I would say this one might be the next heaviest. You ready to go? All right, sir. So we're going to get into the first segment. Now, this is something I know a lot of listeners who've tuned into the other episodes have heard, but I think it's important to kind of go through it again. And that's the weighted vest. So I've talked about this before, and I've got my little bags of sand here, right? So the weighted vest is just a metaphor, right? It's a 40-pound weighted vest. It's got 10 of these 4-pound weights. And each of these weights, why I love that vest is each weight represents something that we're carrying. So it could be heartbreak, betrayal, loss, a vice, failure, fear, regret, anxiety, whatever it is. And the thing is too, most men aren't just carrying one thing, they're carrying multiple. So you want to, kind of think about it, right? We start our day, we get up, and before we, even know what's going on, that 40-pound vest, it's on, right? So now, do you feel it right away? Is that 40-pound vest, if you were to put one on, is it unbearable? No, it's manageable, right? First 30, 40, 60 minutes is manageable. Might be a little bit uncomfortable. But again, you think about half the day, let's say by noon, you're up at 6, by noon, those straps from that vest are going to be cutting into your shoulders. And Jay, I'm sure you know this. You've done a lot of rucking in the military. You carried a pretty heavy bag on your back while serving. How did that feel after a few hours?
God, man, all you want to do is get it off your shoulders. It just digs in there. It cuts your skin. Yeah, you see guys trying to add more and more padding to that spot just to make it so it doesn't dig in as much. And it's funny, it's just like life. We won't deal with what's in the bag. We'll just add more and more padding so we don't feel the bag. You
More and more
know?
patty would be like, smoke another joint, have another drink, eat some more food, right? As,
Yeah.
work a little harder, watch some more porn, play some more video games, whatever it is, right? Let's just avoid taking whatever's in the bag. Let's avoid making it lighter. Let's just add more padding, like you said. Or we do the other thing. What happens when especially when we were in school, right? We just try to adjust the straps over a little bit. We'd shimmy it
Yeah.
over, and then, well, it becomes bearable again for a few minutes until again, well, now where it's sitting, it's cutting into the shoulders again. So, you think about it over the whole period of a day, you're carrying around this baggage, the pain of the past with you. By the evening, you're insufferable, right? So you get home, and what happens? Well, that negative self-talk has been manifesting itself all day. You're treating your wife terribly. Your kids are impacted by your attitude because the demons that you won't acknowledge or address are now the ones raising your kids, right? Your employees, maybe if you're a boss, or you as an employee are miserable to deal with. No one wants to be around you. So when this happens, again, we've talked about that coping mechanism that we put in, or the padding is, as you so eloquently put it just a second ago, right? Adding more padding. So we get home. Well, now we pour ourselves a drink. We roll a joint. We go to the fridge, right? Because stress is up. Well, now we need to balance that stress with self-care. And again, most self-care is not healthy. It's not conducive to helping us mentally, emotionally, or even physically. So now we go to that substance. We just don't want to feel because we're addicted to not feeling. The drinking and the drugs are not the real problem. The real problem is that facing the vest actually means we have to take ownership because sure, maybe we're not responsible for some of the really shitty things that happen to us early on in life, especially when you're a kid, but you are responsible for your healing. All right. That's on you. So, Jay, you've dealt with, I'm sure, your own version of that vest. What does that feel like on a bad day?
Before I seeked help, it was everything. It was all I felt, all I carried, all I could think about. I couldn't get out of my head. It's just there all the time. Like they say, if you have really bad debt, it's all you think about. If you got really bad stress, you got really bad whatever, it's all you think about. You dream about everything else. So before I actually, like I said before, checked my ego and asked for help, I mean, it was my only thing in my life, and all I try to do is add more padding, like take an Ativan, have a drink, do whatever I do. I had to distract myself from taking care of that bag and getting the weight out of there, you know? And it,
Okay, so I'm kind of curious. Like, when did you notice you were first wearing it?
childhood trauma, I hate going back to it, but I don't know. Like you talk about forgiveness, that's something I can say I did not forgive. And to this day, I still haven't. I don't think I ever will. Um, it's one of those things too, like it's the reason why I didn't have kids. The way I was treated growing up, the way my brothers and I were treated growing up is the main reason why I didn't have kids. And my older brother had kids, and I said, "Be careful," because they say you will be your parents with your kids. And my older brother was like, "No, I would never do that." Da, da, da. And before my older brother asked for help, he was treating his kids like we were treated. And he didn't even see it. It just came out of him. And I remember reading about that so much, saying like, you will act like your parents, you will do stuff and you won't even realize it, you won't even know it. And my older brother, luckily, has a really good wife and she helped him out. And, she says, look, you have to change stuff. And she called him right out. She said, "You are being a narcissist like your parents were to you. Like, and I don't think you're even realizing that you're doing it." And yeah, it killed me. And it's the reason why I didn't have kids. But that is one thing I talk to my psychiatrist a lot, but it's one thing that I cannot forgive, and I don't think I ever will. Now, I've talked to her about it. I had it out with my parents on a phone call, like everything the psychiatrist said I needed to say. I said it. It was a yelling match, whatever. I said my piece and we hung up the phone and we have never spoken since. And I probably won't till one of those unfortunate episodes where you hear kids and parents making up on deathbeds. Am I proud of it? No, but I only have so much fix in me. I'm working on PTSD. I'm working on some other traumas, brain trauma and stuff like that. And the parent one is one I have to put on the shelf for now. Cause that one, I think I don't know. I don't want to go back that deep in the past. I don't want to bring that back up because 51 years I've been trying to fix that. 51 freaking years I've been trying to fix that one and I can't. They won't change. I have, and I'm willing to talk about it, but they're not. And
Of course.
you can't force a narcissist to change. You can't force them to change their ways and whatever. They are boomers. They are stuck in their ways. They're in their late 70s and they ain't changing now. Yeah. I mean, it's one I kind of regret that I haven't been able to fix, but I got enough stuff I need to fix.
I think we're gonna touch on that a little bit later. It's interesting, you say that. There's a couple of interesting things. First and foremost, I kind of had that discussion with my grandfather just before he died, like literally on his deathbed, and he apologized for how he had been with me growing up. Now I was young at the time, not in a good place in my life, headspace, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Sure, I was lifting weights, but arguably that was probably the only good form of self care that I was doing. Everything else is just being managed through some form of escapism. But when he apologized, I did appreciate that he made that effort, but I didn't appreciate it until prison. Wasn't until prison when I actually sat down and started facing everything I'd been through, where I really thought about what my grandfather had said. And I learned a little bit more about what he had been through when he was young. And again, I'm not sitting here justifying someone abusing someone else, but it made me understand. And you just touched on it, right? if you don't address your demons, right? Just like I said a few minutes ago, if you don't address that, that's what's going to raise your kids. And a lot of the time, we aren't even aware, or we realize that we're doing things that are kind of learned patterns or behaviors from our parents, or, our friends growing up. We kind of minimize it and we think, well, yeah, this is completely normal. Or we might do it to a lesser degree, but we're still doing the bad thing. We're still doing something we shouldn't be doing. So I think that's a really interesting thing you shared, Jay, and thank you for sharing that, because yeah, you've come such a long way since I've known you. You've had a lot to deal with. PTSD, I don't even think people understand. I mean, I've got some PTSD myself from the night that, the murder happened, and being in prison, and some of the things I saw in there. I can't even imagine the PTSD you deal with, right? It's literally apples and oranges. You're on like another level. So, again, I'm really proud of you, and I want to acknowledge and just say, like, keep up the good work, and hopefully it'll come to a point where, even if you can't hear them say or ask for forgiveness, even just letting go of that shit
Yeah. I've like
is good.
working with my psychiatrist and stuff, like I've let it go. Like it doesn't keep me up at night like it used to. I don't like I used to overplay like my entire growing up, everything in my head all the time. It used to really bother me. But once I kind of wrote down and said everything I had to say on the phone call, like everything that bothered me, everything that happened, blah, 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 like a big list. I wrote it all, I said it all. And they try to argue with me and, you know, you're exaggerating and kids don't understand and you kids were just difficult and it was the way it was. And I just, but since I said what I said and my psychiatrist called it, she's like, they're going to say this because this is what a narcissist do. They're going to turn it around. They're going to, and they did everything exactly like she said they were going to do. And at the end, after I said my piece, I actually felt a lot better. And once they kind of didn't reciprocate it and try to blame me and everything else, I was actually content just with to let it go. Like I haven't forgiven. I
Beautiful.
haven't said any of that stuff. I'm not that big, unfortunately, yet. You know what I mean?
Your
But
arms are huge, but it's that emotional muscle we got to
yeah,
work on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I haven't hit that point yet, but it doesn't plague me anymore. It's not one of the things I think about all the time. Like it still comes up, of course. I'm not going to tell people like, "Oh, you say this and you'll be healed." No, but it
Well, here's
doesn't.
here's what's interesting about forgiveness. You might forgive, but you don't forget, right? Like I always laugh when people are like, forgive and forget. No, no. Your mind and memory, like unless you have the Men in Black, little, like erase the memory. No, you're always going to remember it, whether you're actively remembering it, or something, a sound, a smell, or something someone says might trigger a memory, or you having a dream. No, I don't think anyone wants to actively harp on something bad that happened to them, but you can't turn that off. Even though we're largely in control of our brains, sometimes our brains start braining. And that's why, again, I always say you're responsible for your second thought, not your first one, your second thought. So if part of the past comes up, just catch it fast, catch it early. Why am I feeling this? Right. And then use that small space, and then hopefully make sure that that second thought, that first action, is in line with who you currently are and who you want to be, so you can move forward in the right manner. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jay. That's interesting. And glad at least you put in some work, because again, this is something that most men never do. So going into segment 2, let's cover now why men don't tend to forgive. So forgiveness, it's important for people to understand that forgiveness does not mean that the other person or persons get off scot-free. Forgiveness is just you taking your life back. It's unilateral, right? Conciliation that's a separate decision that involves them. And if that's something you get a chance to do, great. But more often than not, with all the people I forgave, I'd say 95% of them, I never got to have that conversation with them. It's kind of a conversation with myself. So you can forgive someone and never actually speak to them again. That's still forgiveness. I need the audience to realize that. You won't always get to have a discussion. Again, when I finally came to terms with my grandfather and everything that happened, he had been dead for, I want to say, a little over a decade. It's kind of a conversation I had to have with myself. Most men do not refuse forgive. They reject it because a lot of the time I think we read it as weakness. Now, cultural script, it says move on, suck it up, don't show the wound. But that's a lie because the wounds of the heart cut deepest and hurt the most. So think about it, right? If we injure ourselves physically, right? If we cut ourselves, we see it. Damn, I cut my hand. So what do? We go maybe clean the area so it doesn't become infected, right? We tend to the wound. And then as soon as we're injured, the body goes into its own process of healing and that's a whole part of being injured. Well, emotional and mental hurt that comes from this kind of stuff, it's the opposite, right? Most of the time we ignore it. We get hurt, our heart gets hurt, and that cuts the deepest. I would say if anyone's had their heart broken, that is the deepest, hardest wound to deal with. But it's not one you can see. So we don't tend it. We just alcohol, drink. I don't want to feel this. I need to numb out. Right? It's minimized. That the alcohol, the food, the work, the drugs. Just ignore the pain and it's gonna go away. Wrong. Right? That 5, 10, 60 minutes that maybe you're catching of relief, it's still there. And just like not tending to the wound, if you cut yourself, right? Well, what happens? Now, instead of it being cleaned and healing properly, well, now it becomes infected and it festers. Same thing applies, right? You don't take care of that emotional wound, that wound of the heart. Especially if you're around the wrong people, right? You're around the wrong group of friends and you go and tell them, oh, like, sure, maybe they're trying to be supportive, but sometimes the things being said aren't always the supportive things you need to hear. So again, it just makes that wound fester, it becomes infected, and it rots you from the inside out. It destroys your very soul. And you look how many people become jagged and bitter and spiteful and hateful because of that, because they don't want to let go. Now, research actually backs up that this happens, that masculinity is fragile, and we are measurably less forgiving than our counterpart, than women. We aren't made that way. And that's why this is so important for men to understand. So forgiveness is actually, I would say, arguably the strongest thing a man can do. And it says, I'm secure enough with who I am that that behavior, what happened, no longer has a hold on me. It doesn't own me. I'm going to let it go. To me, that is true strength. So forgiveness is not condoning. It's not forgetting. It's not saying the person gets off free. It's just you taking your life back. So, Jay, men you've known, maybe men you've served with, when they say they're over it, right? I'm sure we've even heard this at the gym, right? Well, I'm over it, right?
Yeah.
How often do you think that men actually are over it? And especially like guys serving, I'm sure they've gotten that Dear John letter from their girlfriend, fiance, or whatever, What have you seen in your experience?
Yeah. Especially guys overseas, they get the Dear John letter, they say they're over it. And usually there's about three things that happen. We would usually sneak the guy some alcohol. He would go in a dark corner or whatever, drink, cry by himself, do whatever. You know what I mean? Next day he feels like shit. And then never talk about it again in front of us or anything else. Or in some of the worst case scenarios, guys would take the pistols and go out to the back of the camp, and some of the guys ate a round to the head, committed suicide over it. And then the third one is they'd have to be sent home, or they'd get on the phone, try to fix it over the phone, or they would beg and they would send them home because if you're in that kind of state, you're really no good overseas when you're in that state. You're going to make a mistake. And unfortunately, if you're in, like when I'm in, like removing explosives or working with explosives, if your mind isn't in it, you're going to make a mistake. So you're better off to send those guys home to try give them a 2-week pass, whatever kind of pass it is that to fix it. And if it didn't fix or whatever, they come back, they would never bring it up again. They'd be like, "No, I'm good. I went home, took care of what I had to take care of, and I'm good now." Nobody was ever good. None of them were ever good. They just stopped talking about it, because that was what we did. You had your outburst, you had your drinking, really drunk, hungover day, and then you never heard the guys talk about it ever again. And we just suffered in silence. That's all we ever did. That's all anybody ever knew. It was just you suffer in silence, you know? And I would eat them, and some guys would get ulcers from it just affecting them so bad. Like you would see it in their face. Like when a guy is stressed or anxiety or whatever, or breakup, you see it in their face. The stress they get. And yeah, I remember like it was crazy. Guys were getting ulcers and the stress and not eating, and some guys could lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Just, some people would eat their emotions and stuff like that. You could see the difference in people, the way they handled it, but no one talked about it. No one fucking said a word. You got an hour with the Padre if you were lucky. And the Padre would do the best he could, but he's a Padre. He's a man of God. He's not a shrink. He's not, you know what I mean? He'll pray with you. He'll bless you, but I mean, he doesn't have the skills to talk you off the ledge.
Mm.
He's there to, bless us and, all that sort of stuff, but he's not a psychiatrist.
Yeah, you can't address the deeper root cause. Yeah, that sounds a lot. I mean, minus eating one, I mean, that sounds exactly like how it was in prison. Like, I can't tell you how many times I'd be on the phone with Joelle because, we have Bell payphones. That's
Yeah.
that's what we have in prison. So you have like sometimes three in a line, or in the last, I guess you could say, like condo or apartment I was in minimum before I got out. We had a hallway. Now they actually spaced out the phones, one at one entrance, one in the middle, and then one at the other entrance. It's quite a big building. But because it's a long hallway, you could hear almost like the person sitting beside you, especially if it was a matter of the heart. You could hear, if the guy's having it all out with his wife, his, girlfriend, fiance, whatever it was, you could hear him breaking. You could hear him whimpering and crying and pleading. And you can see, like you said, like you see it in their face, but their posture, everything. You can literally watch while that's going on. Like I could look over at that phone and Joel's like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, just another day." And you hear this literally on the daily. I would say maybe not every day, but you're hearing it at least, I would say on average about 3 to 4 times a week. You're hearing someone's life getting completely turned upside down and destroyed. And I'm not, look, we made choices. Regretfully, when you make certain life choices, you have to suffer the consequences. I'm not saying these guys didn't deserve what was coming to them, right? You made this choice, and this is regretfully a reality you have to pay for making a selfish choice, because breaking the law is a selfish choice. Whether you're doing it to provide a better quote unquote life for your family, you're still running the risk that when you go away and your spouse or your common law, your wife, whatever, doesn't have you anymore, well, out of sight, out of mind. But you can literally watch these guys breaking beside you. You can see the wound that's being created. I remember letting go of my ex when I was in Max, when I'd finally just had enough of having her in and out of my life. And I gave her that one last chance. And, if you give me a reason to doubt you, it's over. Best decision I ever made. Hardest decision
Yeah.
was walking away because I was looking at doing the rest of my time alone. I didn't know Joelle was in the cards a few years down the road. But walking away from that, potentially being alone, oof, I cried hard that night in my cell. And I was already in a decent place working towards healing. But when you're letting go of that kind of stuff, when it comes to matters of the heart, yeah, it's hard. It makes you realize how sometimes how weak we are as men.
Yeah, and it
You
sneaks
know?
up on you, man, and sometimes you'd be
Oh.
like, "The hell, I just benched 200 pounds. How could I be having my face in the pillow fucking crying over this person?" Like, it doesn't make sense to you sometimes how you could be so strong and an hour later you're so weak, you know? And that's what men don't like, we didn't understand that growing up, all that sort of stuff. Like, to us, it was like, "Oh, you don't show it, you don't talk about that stuff, you don't everything," you know?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And again, it's not like when you're in the military, I'm sure it's the same thing in prison. It's not like you can just go and talk to somebody. Like everyone's dealing with something. So what are you gonna do? Go talk with your cellmate? You're gonna go talk with your, your fellow soldier who's got his own things on his plate, who's missing his family, maybe dealing with his own stress at life. You just no, you bottle it up. You bottle it up and you numb out.
Yeah.
I'm just not gonna feel it until again it gets the better of you and it just destroys you.
Well, that's what I find, it's even worse now in the military now, because now that they've legalized gummies, like marijuana gummies, guys are just able to check out so much easier. So, like, if you drank every night, eventually people would see the problem in you because you're going to smell like alcohol, you're not performing and all that. You're just going to see it. Like, alcohol is just going to slow you down and blah, blah, blah. But these guys that take gummies every night just to check out so they can sleep, whatever, well, they could do that for years and not have any problems. I know people today that take gummies every single night. Every night they take gummies, but, and to them, it's like, well, it's what life is, you know? And, but I don't know. I don't know how to say it. I just find it's getting worse now because since they legalized some stuff and I'm like, it's that catch 22. Yes, legalized for people who have pain, people cancer, all this stuff and that, but there's people that are using it for the wrong reasons just to numb out. Like you say, they don't want to look in that bag. I didn't want to look in that bag for years, 20 something years. I didn't want to look in that bag. No one does. Cause you're going to look in that bag and you're like, oh my God, look at this shit in here. I haven't dealt with, old crusty socks and old shirts and garbage you haven't cleaned out in forever. And you got to pull that thing out one at a time and start dealing with it. It sucks.
Well,
Absolutely
it's
sucks.
even like if you want to take an even more profound illustration, imagine again you injure yourself. You don't do much in the way of cleaning and tending and doing what you need to keep that clean. Imagine you leave that bandage on for a month.
Yeah.
Something starts to smell funny, and you peel that back, right? You don't like you're gonna have to go see. Will you be able to tend to it yourself
No,
after that month? No,
no.
you might even lose the hand. It'll let maybe the arm. Right? Gangrene could set in. Like I know I'm talking obviously this has gone far, but really think about it. If you're able to tend to the wound fast, the faster you tend to it, the faster you address it, the easier it gets. Right? But if you don't, well, now you got to go see a specialist. Just like if you hold on to that hate, to the pain that you're carrying, well, now you're going to spend twice as long trying to recover, if not more. And the thing is, like, I get it, men. It's scary. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the big tough guys, right? Oh, I'm never scared. No. No, let's be real. Let's be honest for a minute here. Everyone that's listening. It's okay to be afraid. Thing is, where your fear is, that's where your task is. I always think of hopefully I can quote this right. That Alex Hormozy statement where he said, fear is like an ocean that's a mile or a lake that's a mile wide or something, and I think it's only an inch deep. Right? It
Okay.
might seem so big, but the chances of you drowning in that almost no chance of drowning. You'll be okay. You just need to test the waters. You need to take that step. You got to stop being afraid of facing the hurt that you're carrying. So now let's get into the third segment here. So I talked about this earlier on, and that's the 2 letters. And I'm going to go in a little bit more to that sweat. So in maximum security, near the end of a program that I took, this is a program, the first program I took, and I think it was about a 8-week or 12-week program. It's been a minute, but the Aboriginal elder towards the end, he asked us to write 2 letters. So I think this was 2 weeks before the program ended. He asked us to do this. So again, 1 letter was to forgive and address the hurt that happened from those in our lives, from loved ones, parents, siblings, friends, exes, whatever it is, right? Whatever you're carrying. And then the other one was for forgiving ourselves. Both letters, probably one of the hardest things I had to do. Because that meant, like you said, I had to open up my bag, or I had to pull off that bandage. I had to look at what had been festering, what had been rotting. Now, those letters, I would say it took me about a week and a half to write it. And obviously, I'm not writing that straight, but I mean, I would start writing, it wouldn't come out right. And I'd kind of become a little bit of a perfectionist back then. So I'd, crumple it up and throw it away and start over again. And I realized then how much I was carrying. I finally started to put a name, almost a face to it, right? There was a resistance to me wanting to write those letters. I didn't want to, but I wanted to arguably finish this course well. Probably would be the first thing, looking back at it, that was like the first thing I actually followed through on, that actually passed. I'd quit everything else. But it allowed me to put the weight of the past on the paper. Then we had the sweat. I don't know if anyone knows I know you're part Aboriginal. Do you know what a sweat is, Jay?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about it from what you know?
That's kind of like the way to describe it's like a teepee. It's like a small little hut that's made. It's kind of like a sauna outside, made with kind
It
of
reminds me of like
natural.
an igloo
Yeah,
almost,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah,
more rounded.
yeah,
But yeah, teepee, igloo kind of
yeah,
shape with animal skin, that
yeah,
layers of animal skin to keep the heat in.
yeah, and it keeps all the heat in, and you use it like a fire. You keep the coals really hot and stuff like that, and it's almost just like a super intense, massive sauna, kind of outdoors in the elements and stuff like that, and you just sweat everything out of you, and you're supposed to almost to the point of like dehydration, and then you're supposed to be able to see the visions, and the kind of the clear road is supposed to come to you. It's almost like you're at a point where you're hallucinating a little bit because it's so hot, but then that's kind of the gateway to let you see kind of your path or your healing journey, you know?
Yeah. Like I remember ours, I think there was 5 rounds. Every round they put in, I think, 2 grandfathers. So grandfathers are these rocks that have been sitting in a fire, like Jay said, it's been sitting in the fire for hours. And they're not like small little rocks. No, these are big honking rocks that are being superheated. And they bring it in. The grandfathers, they bring 2 grandfathers in, or 1 grandfather, I forget. Anyways, they put it in, and then you go in once it's been brought in. The native Aboriginal elders there, obviously inside. We were, I think, 15 guys. So we're just squished into this tight enclosed place. You have to understand too, it's pitch black in there. There is no light whatsoever. The only thing you see is when the elder splashes water on top of the rock, then you see this glow. And there's no escaping this. Like you can't find a crevice to catch your breath almost. And then on top of that, you're fasting for 24 hours before you do it. So like,
That's,
again, I thought the letters were hard. Oh man, the sweat. Yeah, like you said, I don't think I was seeing anything, but I came to a realization while I was in there And that was in that discomfort, I felt so much leaving my system. Like every time I got out, because after every round, you get out for a second, you kind of cool down. They let you have, I think it's about maybe a 10-minute break, then you go back in. But every time I got out of that sweat, I felt lighter.
Yeah.
Not just because I was losing tons of water, massive amounts of water weight, but I felt lighter. And also, too, before we started that sweat, we actually burned our letters. And not everyone wrote it out of the 15 guys, but I burned my letters. I read it one more time and I burned them in that fire where they were heating the grandfathers. And it really felt like, I'm not a big believer in it, but I always think of the symbolism of almost the phoenix,
Yeah.
right? Phoenix dies, rises from the ashes anew. It's kind of
Right.
how I felt, right? There was a part of me that died, and there was a new part of me that was kind of reborn, or however you want to say it.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's for. It's just your demons. You're almost supposed to like sweat your bad demons out of you,
Yeah.
and you kind of see a vision. They hope you see a vision, and you see that, and it's like it's cleansing you and stuff like that. And for some people it works, and other people it doesn't. But I don't know. You have to kind of like have an open mind when you go in there and just see what happens, see what you see, and it's the darkness that plays with you because it's
Oh,
so
does it
dark.
ever, man?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so because there's no
Yeah.
light, it really just your brain actually disassociates from your vision, and it's just your hearing and your brain just going ballistic, and so that's why you're able to process a lot of stuff because you've taken your eyes out of it. So,
Yes. That's actually a great way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah,
You have no sight of anything.
right.
You just hear the elder, and he's, humming these native chants, and you don't really have a concept of where you are in time and space, almost, if that
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I remember every time we did a round, there was less guys coming back in. And these were like straight up native boys. I'm like the whitest native guy there because I got, some native on my dad's side. I'm
Right.
third generation, but the uh the the Aryan part of my DNA, my mom, German, Dutch, and stuff like that. That's why I look so white. But if you were to see my grandfather, you'd be like, on my dad's side, he'd be like, oh damn, okay, yeah, I see the native in you. But in there, all these guys were tapping out. Like that last round, I believe they called the warrior round. There was myself, the elder, and one other guy. No, two other guys. There was three of us left out of 15 that started it. Everyone else is just like, no, we're not doing this anymore. It it was, though, very, very liberating. And at the end, I felt very proud of myself for actually accomplishing it. To actually follow through on doing something that most of the guys there couldn't do. And it was just like, okay, if I can get through this, arguably the hardest physical thing I think I'd ever been through, I can get through anything. I didn't die. I felt like I was going to die. I didn't die.
And it's so funny because when you say that, that's exactly what JTF2 selection is. You see guys bailing out, falling out. You think it's the worst thing. You think you're going to die. But then the longer you stay in and you see more people falling out, you actually gain more strength because you're like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still going. I'm still running. I'm still doing push ups. And it actually gives you, it's weird because we've always talked about the guys that finished. It actually gives you more strength later in the hell week that you're doing when you see all these guys tapping out and quitting. It's a weird thing, and it's the same with, like you say, in the sweatshop and the other stuff like that. You actually gain strength from people that tap out,
Sweatshop. I'm
or
just kidding.
the
I'm
yeah.
just
After I said it, I was like, "Shit, that didn't come out right."
everyone knows what you mean. But yeah, you're right. Like it actually did motivate me more. I'm like, I can do this. I can do this.
Yeah,
And you're like, I love how you tied that into JTF because yeah, we've talked about that at length while we're training. I'll always ask you questions about that test because it always kind of piques my mind about like what's the process? When do guys quit? Why do guys quit? What is typically the breaking point? I know you said like usually where you lose most is in the pool.
yeah.
which
Those
makes sense because we're not fish.
Yeah. And it's just putting people in uncomfortable situations. So the pool, for a lot of people, water is an uncomfortable situation. You're going to put people in huts. You're going to put people in confined spaces. So they're going to put you purposely in uncomfortable situations. And you're either going to strive or you're going to panic. And it basically as clear as that. So, but the more people you see panic and tap out, you actually gives yourself some confidence. You're like, I can do this. I can be one that makes it. I can do what everybody's quitting in. And then when you, let's say out of 6 of you, you're the only one who passed that one thing out of that group of 6, you're like, man, I got this. I got this. So that's what I'm saying. Like, even talking with a psychiatrist, maybe it's that first session with them. You know what I mean? And then you do another and you do another and you're like, actually, I can do this. I can talk. I can go through that bag as long as I have someone with me so I don't get overwhelmed going through my rucksack. Because you try to go through that rucksack by yourself, fuck, you could be having a bottle of rum beside you while you're going through that bag. It's just not going to work. But if I start going through that bag and I have people around me who are qualified that can help me, that can, assist me in going through that bag, it's not going to be that hard. You're going to be like, hey, I can do this. I can dive in this bag that I didn't open for 20 something years.
It's a one, yeah, it's actually a great analogy because a lot of the time I've got to force the people that I mentor. I almost have to like force them like, yo, you get back in that bag. Like you need to like pull that out. You got to make sure that that's no longer being carried. You don't need this anymore. Right. And then this kind of goes back to why they still carrying it. Well, victim or victor. So kind of segment 4. So a lot of people, they'll never be happy because deep down, they don't want to be. Right. Most men, I think we know we need to fix it, but it's just easier to stay a victim of circumstance rather than become a victor of opportunity, rather than take the initiative, make that effort to better your circumstances, right? One's familiar, being a victim's familiar. I know that. The other, it requires us to develop a whole new identity. And that in itself, again, is scary because our brain wants to protect ourselves. It wants to stay in the familiar. And now you're like, oh, I got to do this hard thing. Your brain is actively trying to stop you from doing it. They call it the extinction burst. So as you're working on bettering yourself, now that will start to the motivation will get you going in the beginning, right? But about 3 weeks in, once you're almost like your bad habit is starting to fade, excuse me, your brain does a one last kind of ditch effort to hold on to who you are. And it's called an extinction burst. And you get whatever you're dealing with, it hits you 100-fold harder than you've ever felt it before. So if you're trying to quit alcohol, you're trying to quit smoking, drugs, pornography, food, whatever it is, whatever your coping mechanism is, that vice you're trying to get rid of, it's going to hit you so much harder. Or it might be maybe you're trying to learn to let go of a toxic ex from your past. How many times have you heard someone working on that and they like after a bit they reach back out to them,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Because they there's a part of who they were. They're trying to get rid of that, right? But there's a part of who they were that just wants to hold on for dear life.
Look at
And then
gym
you'll do
memberships.
something like that.
Look at
Sorry?
look at gym memberships on January 1st. Why a gym membership lasts 3 weeks? Why is January the busiest month in the gym and February is one of the quietest months in the gym? Because like you said, after that 3 weeks, their brain says, nah, come on, and it wins. You know?
1 week, you miss a workout or two, right? About 3 weeks in,
Yeah.
you fall off your diet a little bit, right? And then you get that all out kind of this extinction burst, like I said. And then it's just like, yeah, you know what? I can't do this too. Okay. Throw in the towel. Quit. Like you quit everything else. That's what manning up means. Manning up doesn't mean I can lift more than you. It has nothing to do with my six pack or how vascular I am or how lean I am year round. Like, no one cares. That's why I don't post pictures of myself with my shirt off, because no one cares.
It's true.
No one cares. Like, my God, if I see another coach always having to flex his abdominals to get clients, like that's not what people should be hiring you for. If that's your best thing to sell, then you got nothing to sell. Majority of the people that need your help will never have a six pack. Well, maybe they will, if they stick with it long enough. They need something more. So I don't post that stuff anymore. I barely post anything from the gym anymore, because I want to help people that are struggling with the deeper things. So again, no one gives a damn about that. No one cares. And the people who do care about it, I don't need your validation. My wife loves who I am. That's all that matters to me. That's all the validation I need.
I
She
mean,
thinks I'm hot.
yeah, I think they posted something on Instagram too. It's like the like 90% of the people that just post posing videos of themselves and everything all the time are usually the ones that are the worst off. They're actually unhappy. They're actually like looking at themselves as fat or this or that, and they kind of need the most help. Some of them, you know. And I was like, yeah, it makes sense, because you see them at the gym working out, and they're usually miserable. And then they smile for a picture, snap it, and then they go back to whatever. We see it all the time at the gym, guys. They go in that one lighting area, take some photos with the perfect lighting, smiling, and then they put their shirt on. And they're like, "Oh fuck, workout sucked," da da da, and they leave the gym all grumpy. you know, it's like, oh shit. Mhm.
The thing is, even if you get that six pack, what's after? Once you've climbed that hill, once you've conquered that mountain, what do you have after? All right, everyone's chasing something. When was the last time someone's like, you know what? I want to fulfill my purpose. I want to heal. I want to be a better man today than I was yesterday. Again, a lot of people they'll never be happy because they don't want to be. Forgiveness, especially the self-forgiveness, like I touched on that before, but I didn't really talk about it. That's self-forgiveness for any man out there. And this is straight from my playbook here. If you understood the amount of regret, like, that's all your cell gives you. Your cell gives you nothing but time to think about what a miserable piece of shit you were and how much you screwed up. Like, the thoughts are so dark in the beginning, especially when you're in for murder. Can't tell you how many times, like, I replayed that night in my head, how many times I dreamt it, relived it in different ways. And this isn't a boo-hoo kind of thing. I'm not asking for anyone's sympathy on this, okay? But when you carry that, if you don't learn to let go, and I'm so glad I made the effort to address that, because had I kept carrying that, it would have broken me. And I've seen it break so many lifers. So many guys that were serving life sentences because they didn't want to acknowledge their role. They justified, they minimized, they shifted the blame, whatever it was. They were the most broken men I'd ever seen in my life. Probably besides vets. But I didn't have a lot of experience in that. But I'm pretty sure, Jay, you can agree on that one.
Yeah.
What happens to a vet that doesn't address their PTSD, their trauma from the past?
Now there's only three roads, and one is usually die of alcohol poisoning or some kind of drug poisoning or something like that. That's why you see so many homeless vets. Like, people ask me all the time, why is there so many homeless vets? Because they lose everything. They spend all their money on drugs or whatever to suppress all feelings, all memories. They always end up divorced and domestic abuse just from not from hitting, but like from yelling and smashing furniture, smashing glasses, and so the wife's getting scared because he's getting worse. So she puts a restraining order on him because he's smashing plates and banging the house and putting holes in the wall, and or they either drug themselves up to the point they die, they commit suicide, or like I think there's maybe 3% of the veterans that have suffered from PTSD or whatever actually ask for help, get help, and actually have a meaningful rest of their life the best they can and find peace. Because that road is the longest, shittiest road I've ever seen. And I went down it, and it's full with weeds and logs. It's all uphill. And it's
Uphill both ways, right? Like
yeah,
our
it's up
grandfathers used to say.
yeah, with a snowstorm coming and the drug alcohol, the other way is a nice downhill golden road, easy, smooth thing that's I'll take care of it tomorrow. I'll take care of it tomorrow. Tomorrow. Next year, tomorrow. I said it all the time. I said next year will be better. Next year will be better. I just need a couple months. I just need to get over this winter or this hard time or this where I told myself the same lies. Told myself the same lies, for years.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing how the male mind, and we can say, well, it's because of war. Or we can say, I can say, well, it's the lifestyle or the choices that we made, the incident that happened, right? In the end, I think this is where it's really hard for us as men. We still made the choice. I made the choice to go and do things to break the law. Just like men in the military. Yours is obviously, arguably a more noble cause, right? But you made a choice. And a lot of the time, I think that's where it becomes hard is us actually accepting that where we are, the broken person that's left at the end of the day, after the end of serving their country, at the end of a man serving a sentence. Both are a life sentence, but both were made. The choice was made by you, by me. We can't blame our parents. Can't blame the bully. Can't blame Vinny from 5th grade. We can't blame anyone. What we're carrying, that weighted vest, we put that on. And it's our responsibility to take it off. But that's so much work, like you said. If you were to look at like fighting another, doing another tour and doing the work that you did, what would you say arguably is harder?
I go on tour 10 times, 10 times I'd take another tour. Yeah. Do that work or go on tour. Psh, I'm good. Send me on tour. Yeah. I would have did like, people ask me questions all the time. Would you do selection again or talk about your problems? I'd do selection again. Easily.
I'll happily, maybe I'll drown and I
Yeah.
won't feel anything anymore. I'll be good,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll do Bulgarian split squats 5 days a week with Tyson over talking about my feelings and shit, like,
Well, how about we do Bulgarians and talk about our feelings in between sets?
yeah, let's just really rub it in there. Like,
Yeah, let's make it worse, right? Salt on the wound.
yeah, it's just funny what we'll do to avoid it. Like how far we'll go to avoid that shit. You know what I mean? Like I went to the end of the world to avoid it.
It's funny, since I've known you, and I've known you for a bit now, since 2020, I'd say this is probably the best winter I ever saw you.
Yeah, yeah, from 2020 for sure. Yeah, this is the
This
actual
is this
first
is
winter.
the yeah. I think this is like the first time you didn't like have a really tough winter. And I know like you still had like your moments, but the the Jay that I saw this winter, it was like another person. And that just goes to show to the audience. Again, this is the guy, the best of the best, avoided arguably what he's saying is the hardest work. But now that he faced it and he did the work, his life is different for the first time. And here, a former inmate telling you the same thing. Like we're not two people reading books. No, we lived it. We lived what you're avoiding. We did the work that you don't want to do. Like doing this isn't excusing what we did. It's not justifying it. It's just addressing it. So, like, stop allowing the shame from your past to ruin your life.
Yeah, because last winter, I was almost hospitalized with how bad I
Yeah,
was. Almost
I
hospitalized. This
remember.
winter, I had about a 2 week kind of kick in the nut thing. And I told you every day, like, and you're like, but over a 5 month, almost hospitalized last winter to a 2 week episode this winter. Yeah, I'd say it's a hell of a lot better, and it's all because I had to go through that bag with someone that could go through that bag with me. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm proud of you, man. Like, good work. And guys, a little bit of a tip, right? Language matters. Okay, so you want to shift your language. Shift it from I don't deserve what happened to me to I can endure the process of healing from it, right? Like I said before, where your fear is, that's where your task is. So just to close things up, forgiveness is the hardest workout you're ever going to do. And like every hard workout, you don't feel it always on the first rep, right? I think of how many people I've trained at the gym, they don't even feel it after the workout. They usually feel fantastic after that first workout. It's the next day and then the day after, right? Where you're like, oh man, the DOMS hits, right? It's that initial start is really hard. What you're about to embark on, if you decide to accept this mission, it's going to be really hard. First few months of working on this, like Jay said, is arguably the hardest thing you'll ever do. But in 6 months, like you have to understand, this isn't a, and I hate the 12-week transformation thing, but this isn't a 12-week transformation. But if you realistically give yourself an earnest 6 months of hard work and effort, you can make tremendous progress. You won't be healed completely, but you'll be in a much better space because you're going to realize that what you were carrying, it might be gone, or at least it's a lot lighter. At least maybe instead of carrying 40 pounds, maybe you've only got 20 on.
Yeah.
Maybe you got half of these gone. That becomes a lot more bearable. I'd rather a 20-pound weighted vest than a 40-pound weighted vest.
Oh, yeah.
And it happens in process, right? It happens in stages. Doesn't happen all at once. Doesn't magically just like, oh, I forgive everyone that's ever hurt me, and I forgive myself. I'm good. Oh yeah. No. That doesn't work like that, guys. It doesn't. So I'm going to ask my audience. I'm going to ask our audience. Try to write 2 letters. One is going to be to maybe not everyone that's hurt you, but select maybe your biggest hurt, whether it's from your parent, your ex, whatever it is. And one for yourself, maybe one past mistake that you've been carrying around for a really long time, right? You don't need to mail them. Just write it. Then burn it, shred it, tear it up. I don't care, right? You don't need to do the sweat. You just need to write those, a simple letter. Start with one person. one thing that they did, one thing that you've been carrying, that elephant in the room, and one for yourself. That's the assignment. That's what I want you guys to try and see how you feel after. Name it. Name it. Put it on paper. Stop just thinking about it in your head and report back to the Mind System community when it's done. I would love most of you guys that listen to us, you follow us on Instagram. Let us know how it goes. I'd love to hear someone making an attempt and how it went and how it felt. Because I know it works. Jay knows it works. Do the work, boys. So, everyone, put down the vest. Thanks for spending this one with us, as always. Till next week. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.